Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in the world of pop culture and everything in between. And this week, we have got the brains behind the film Diener 89. Paul Spence, the Diener himself, will be joining us. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour. We're really excited this week because we're joined by somebody that to myself and to Ryan means a hell of a lot. Ryan, let's bring you in here. You know, as well as I do, when the movie Fubar came out in 2002, it really was our answer to Spinal Tap. It was Canada's Spinal Tap. It was our moment to have those characters that we could identify with, that were absurd, that were outrageous. And it was just so special. And, of course, Fubar 2 comes out in 2010. And then, something happens. We don't really hear much from the Fubar guys. But Paul Spence keeps the Diener alive. And now he is, Paul's done a ton of other things in the world of film and in the world of and writing and music, but he is back with his character Diener in this origin story, if you will. And this conversation was just so much fun. I know this one meant a lot to you too, right?
Absolutely. Diener, sometimes we even mention it in the interview. Sometimes you're always looking for things that you can be proud about being a Canadian or just something that really represents Canada that still can be funny, but at the same time is not like a caricature, like an insulting caricature of it. It doesn't always have to be like that. But Canada's a big country, and like when someone's like sees them on The Simpsons, they're like, "Oh, here's the Canadian character." We have a lot of accents from province to province, and it's Fubar was just one of those hilarious, dark turning around episodes about not necessarily the bands, but the people that go see the shows, and they're just a lifestyle. And I don't know, I love Fubar too as well. It's really cool. And I met Dina once, and I tell a story about it, but I'll leave that for the interview.
Yeah. He's very personable. He's a good dude. Paul's a really talented dude, and he really he has this way about him that you can tell that there's a lot going on behind there. You might think in your mind, oh wow, you just dismissed this guy as a goofball, but no. Um, Diener is a character. Paul is a person. And when you get to talk to Paul outside of the Diener character, it's really cool because there's a lot going into these, into writing these scripts, into fleshing out these characters, into telling a story. And in Diener 89, there's some really interesting stuff that's weaved throughout this script that's poignant, that matters, that's topical, serious issues. It's not just what you might see on the surface. There's a lot of undertones that are written into the script and that appear in this movie that really mean something. And there's a lot of messages as well. So Ryan, I love this conversation. It was a pretty lengthy one. And we got to ask him some pretty cool questions, and we got to really peel back the curtain and see what's going on behind the mind of Paul Spence when he goes into Diener mode. So it was really very cool. Before we jump too fast, though, we want to thank our friends over at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. And if you use our promo code Rockman20, you'll get 20% off your entire order. This is camp sauce directly from my fridge. And as you can see, Ryan, this has been used. This is one of my favorites. And you can get this right now at Heartbeat if you use our promo code Rockman20, 20% off your entire order. All right, let's jump into this. You ready?
I was fucking born ready.
Well, let's give her.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. What are you guys up to?
We're just sitting here waiting to chat, and we're really happy we get to chat with you. Do you remember coming into my studio at Shome?
I do. Yeah. That was awesome, man. That was
So we weren't sure if we were talking to Paul or to the Diener. So we're talking to Paul. So this is going to make things this which is fine. This is going to make things different, but I kind of prefer it. Not that
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to the Diener because I love the Diener.
I never gotten to meet the Diener, but Paul, you were at a party. This is like, I know you will never remember this. I barely remember this, but
It's, this
there,
is a good start.
we were playing a party, and my friend Jared, he got us. He's like, yeah, we're gonna play this college party. I'm like, okay. So it's like 3 floors of this house, and we're playing in the basement. We're rocking out, and like whatever. We keep playing. No one's there anymore. It's really late, and then I hear a familiar voice say, "Hey, man, play some Misfits covers." And I'm like, okay, sure, let's play Misfits covers. And then they're like, dude, that's fucking Paul from that movie. And I'm like, holy shit, play more Misfits covers. So anyway, I've performed for you a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But in
Well,
my
what do you remember where that party was? What neighborhood
fuck
it was?
no, I don't know, somewhere downtown in
Okay.
2002. Yeah,
Yeah,
2003, I guess.
because I've got a pretty good memory for locations. Faces is a whole different problem, but
Oh, there you go.
We're so yeah, so the last time you and I chatted was when you came to promote. It was the project that you had before Night.
Nightseeker, my band Nightseeker. Yeah,
And I remember going to see Night Seeker, and it was fucking awesome.
yeah, man, that album, 3069, a space rock sex. I'm so I'm so proud of that record because it's like it really is a Montreal kind of thing. Like I had Roy Buccino
Yeah, Roy from Pie Pie and
from Pie Pie, CPC Gangbangs, and then there was like Ian Wilson from the band Battalion, which is like a super band, metal band from Montreal, and then Guillaume Tremblay, who's been in every punk band ever in Montreal. So just it was like this like super group. Album was just such a success from like a metal standpoint. What I
yeah, no, it was a lot of fun, and I remember that project. Just you just seemed like you were having the time of your life doing that. Like, and the way you're describing it now, in the moment, you were really, really, you could tell you were proud of it. You guys had merch. I remember you brought me like a baseball shirt and everything, and you were like
yeah.
full on into fucking this project. And I hadn't heard from you in a while, and then my buddy Simon messages me. He just sends me the link. He's like, check out the trailer for this, and I'm like, holy fuck, are you working this? He's like, yes. I go, I want to talk to Paul because
Yeah.
the last
Yeah,
time I spoke to him, the project was fucking phenomenal. So both Ryan and I got to watch Diener yesterday, and I had just had the best time watching this movie.
That's great. That's so great to hear. I mean, you spend so much time writing the script, fixing the script, and then finally you shoot it. It takes years and years to sort of get it all together, and then it comes out, and then you do a test screening, which we did in Toronto about 6 months ago, and people were like, "Wow, it was really great." And then you get these really specific, what do you call it, like hyper specific, like details of where people's interest lagged or whatever. And
Right.
a couple of notes that at the end, some people just felt it wasn't satisfying. Like there were these sort of like these adjectives that were coming up. Like, okay, so what did we do there? So we went back and we reshot a couple of things with like modern Dean, rich Dean, and just made the ending a little bit funnier. And now I don't know. Yeah, people were walking out of the theaters, like packed houses in Winnipeg and Edmonton last week, and they were just like big grins on their faces, just walking around, Raise a Little Hell is playing, and they're just like, oh, that was cool, man. Like, so it really feels like, we managed to pull off what we wanted to, which was like tell a really interesting story. But like, yeah, have people walk out of the theater. They had an hour and a half outside of their own little lives or whatever their, troubles are during the day or the week or the year. And they can just kind of like kick back and have some fun, but also walk out, maybe learning a little about or thinking a little bit about the sort of like colonialism that dogs Canada to this day.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's it. You could easily look at this film and dismiss it for being, oh, it's just silly. But there's a
Mhm.
lot of subtext in there. There's a lot of deeper meanings. It deals with a lot of issues, and you don't skirt away. You hit them on the fucking nose. So I think that's what I like about it. There's a message that's wrapped into this silly adventure.
Well, I think this is something I wanted to talk to you guys about because you guys are rock guys, but rock I don't think really covers it. I think what you I mean I don't know both of you that well, but I'm assuming you guys are in this and investing all your time in like music and being a part of it. It's because you understand how important music is to people like us. That is, it's our community. And I read a book called Tribe. This was somewhere around the middle of my screenwriting process, and it spoke to the fact that human beings, like, for 10,000 years before we became, modernized and we're living in urban centers, we relied on this, like, small group of people. Like, you're getting the water, I'll go, every single this important part to play in their own little community. And it gave people valor. It gave people reasons to live, to get up in the morning. And that was part of like what being human was like being part of a tribe. And in the modern world, you get your coffee over there, someone brings your food to your house or whatever. That sort of valorization of your everyday, what you're doing is sort of, it's reduced. But being in a band or being in a community of metalheads, in that community, you feel valorized, important. And I think that's something that I wanted to really get across in this movie, is how important it is to community, any way you can. And then Dean's finding his metal community, but he's also finding the Métis community, which is a little bit more difficult to put your fingers around. Because, like, who are the Métis people? They're kind of a diaspora. They're spread out all over the place, and I think that can be said for a lot of people.
Oh, that's true for sure. I have I have so many Native friends that when we were teenagers, lately they've been like, yes, especially after it was, well, everybody who knows their Canadian history has known there's some terrible moments, of course, there, but there's also when people were relearning about the schools and all the things that would happen there. Like, I think the last residential school only closed in like the late 80s. So
It's
it's
90s, no,
no, 90s. There we
1994.
go. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I had friends that they're all like, "Yes," and I'm just like, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, you're native." Because like they weren't walking down the street and the first thing they weren't saying is like, "Hi, I'm this person." And I'm just like thinking, "Fuck. I've been friends, my friends my whole life. They're like these wonderful people, and it's like this idea that I take for granted that I grew up in a time after that fact and in a melting pot like Montreal. But when you look at a rural city or or town that the character Diener is based out of, how isolating that must have been, especially trying to craft an identity, finding out who you are so later in life when you're a popular jock and metal and this ancestry just turns it on its head, and then he all of a sudden he has to become somebody else. Like, that's so fascinating. How did you come about thinking of that kind of story arc?
That's a cool question, man. I appreciate that. And
Mm.
the context that you give me is really interesting as a guy who, like, I moved to Montreal in my 20s, but I
Mm.
didn't have that young Montreal experience of growing up. So but my son currently is experiencing that, like, he doesn't see color. I remember this awesome story. We were watching a movie and the teacher was black. And he said, "Oh, that teacher, she reminds me of Marjolaine, my teacher, who was white." You know what I mean?
Oh,
Because she was kind. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And like that kind of stuff is like, okay, that was not my childhood. You know what I mean? In Calgary, like, I saw
Gotcha.
color 'cause all my friends were white and so forth. So that kind of stuff is very Montreal. So I'm glad you shared that anecdote.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like, for me, it was, what I wanted to do was like tell this hilarious like backstory of like, okay, where does the fanny pack come from? Where does the shotgunning beer? Where did he learn shotgun beer? The mustache? Where do all these sort of like iconic character traits of Diener come from? But at the same time, you know, um, thread them through with a story that has some sort of pertinence to the world that we live in today. And so I started thinking like, well, what is that? You know what I mean? And then I happened to be in Saskatchewan a couple of years, or 3 years ago, with my dad, and we had only recently found out that both his parents were Métis, right? Like, he didn't know he was
Wow.
Indigenous at all. One of the stories from the film, lines from the film, that is like, well, you go back and you tell those kids at school who beat you up that you're not an Indian. Like, that's a story that came from my dad. Like, his mom told him that. And she went to her grave, both went to their grave, sort of like white passing, that in northern Saskatchewan, their kids could have a better life than they did by being white passing, right? Despite the fact that my dad and his three sisters, like, are very indigenous looking, right? But they thought they could maybe pull that off, for obvious reasons, like racism in the north of Saskatchewan was probably pretty bad in the 50s, 40s, 60s. So I tried to sort of thread those light, not sort of thread that into the story, so it's not, every, every 5 minutes you're getting hit by this wallop of a big, sort of like gnarly story, but at the same time not veering away from the fact that being indigenous from one day to the next, it poses a lot of questions, especially in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, how comfortable are you sort of all of a sudden being a group that, not only might not accept you because you didn't grow up in it, but also in a group that has historically been treated with racist policies and just racism in general, right?
And it's funny because you know, you know what you guys were just discussing about, like, you know, growing up not caring about those things until they're brought to your attention that you need to care about them for someone else's fucking hangups. And it's very, very interesting how your relationship in the movie, you know, your dad, even your own father at one point, who's like not your real dad, but he's your foster dad or is your adoptive dad. He tells you to hide this for the better of your career, you know. And it's just because I'm sure, you know, listen, my dad, you know, growing up in Montreal, like my dad's Jewish and my mom's Irish. So I never fit in anywhere when it came to, you know, if I grew up, if I was around Jewish kids, they were like, wow, you're not really Jewish. Your mom's not
You're
Jewish.
too Irish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if I was around the Irish kids, they were like, "Well, yeah, you're Jewish." And so I never fit in. So, but
Hmm.
sometimes when you're not necessarily identifiable right off the bat, it's very, very easy to blend and then to hear things you wouldn't hear if you were very, you know, if you were obviously looking like that thing that these people don't like or they don't understand better.
Hmm.
So when you're in a locker room, like you are, like your character is, and you know, obviously you become a little bit more, you know, you can tell that the Diener's going through you know, discovering himself, finding out who he really is, and then he's put in a situation in the locker room, and there's a big, you know, there's this big showdown that goes down with some beers and stuff, and you feel that you feel like, because that's what happens when you're kids and you're with people that don't, you know, that are they're influenced by this, you know, their environment, and it just becomes this really uncomfortable place. But I think you really handle it well because you show the two sides of it, the side where sometimes you'll just go along with it and other times you'll stand up for yourself, depending, but that's the journey of an adolescent, finding out who they are, how they're going to deal with things, and getting that confidence to go, no, fuck you, this is who I am, and if you don't like it,
Hmm.
suck a dick.
Yeah, well, that's part of what I was wanting to. This is sort of addressing one of the earlier questions about like what I wanted to do with the script is that I really wanted to give Dean this something. You had to give him something to lose. You know,
Yeah,
like it wasn't just, oh, he discovers metal and isn't that great. It had to be like he had to sever an entire part of his life. Like what's I think sort of a subtle part of the film. But Dean never goes home again. Like he leaves home at 16 and
yeah,
he never goes back home. And that to me was something that spoke to me. Like I left home at 19, which is considerably different, understandably. Like, you know, I had finished high school and stuff, but
yeah,
the idea of like leaving, like of the sort of like the difficult decision that is, of how powerful of a decision of a life change that is, of a personality trait that takes to leave home at 16, especially when your parents were loving. Like Dean's parents weren't abusive or anything.
not at all. Yeah,
They were kind of ridiculous, and you know they were like lost world, but they weren't like bad or anything. So for him to leave his hockey career, you know, he's a hockey star and big guy, you know, big man on campus in town, and he had a cool, you know, cute girlfriend. Like to leave all that behind for the love of metal and rock and roll. Like to me, that was the thing that I really wanted to hammer home. Like that's how powerful metal was to him. He was just like, now I've seen the other side, and I have to go right to it.
I gotta ask you. I'm well aware enough. I know how the sausage gets made to an extent. I know that music and licensing, that's a whole thing. Was it always decided that Dawkins was going to be the kiss of your Detroit Rock City? Because,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no, fantastic question and very pertinent to the story because well, I mean, first of all, like Detroit Rock City had already been made, and I'd seen it. And you know, great film. But what I really liked was the idea of a band that played on those huge tours, like Monster. They played on the Monsters of Rock tour, which was what Van Halen. It was Kiss. It was Motley
yeah,
Crue. Like I'm missing some massive bands, but they also played on that. But then, like looking back into the history of it, they also played 2,000, 3,000 seat sort of like small town arenas. They would do those tours also. They weren't necessarily doing like the massive Van Halen sort of like, you know, Japan, Australia, you know, like they did those sort of small places. So there's two things. Like one, I needed a band I could actually put into my script that I knew I could shoot eventually, because who's going to rent out the 20,000 extras, right? And Dawkins was one of those bands who was they straddled the line. Their lyrics were a bit absurd, like, but they also, if you were 16 years old, they would really reach into your chest, breaking the chains around you. Nobody else can find you. You know what I mean? Like if you're 16 and you're listening to that in your headphones, you're like, oh, man, parents are the chains. I just gotta break the chain. You know what I mean? And then the song in the film was "Lost Behind the Wall." That song just spoke to me too. Like I was, it's like when you're listening to institutionalized, by suicidal tendencies. Like I listened to that song not long ago, and I felt 12 years old again. Like I was just like, fuck, this song is so good. I almost like had tears in my eyes. It was so good. And so you listen to a song like "Lost Behind the Wall," and you're just like, that's the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like this. It's like it's nostalgia for a person that you never even were, but like you kind of wished you were. So like yeah, like that Dawkins was 100% in the script fair from the very beginning. I mean, and George, the guitar player, is just like one of my favorites. He's so talented, but he's subtle also. He wasn't like a wanker like a lot were back in that era. So yeah, Dawkins 100%, and I'm hopeful that like they're all still around. I hope that this sort of revives, not that it revives their career, like they all have great careers, but like I hope it revives a little bit of people's appreciation, respect for that band specifically because they are a bit overlooked.
Well, the expression "rockin' like Dawkins," I mean, come on, I fucking say that all the time. Rockin' like Dawkins and fat like Rat.
Yeah.
Um, so I got to ask you because in the cast you've got some great people aboard for the ride. Obviously Kevin McDonald, your sister Star Slade, but I want to talk a little bit about Will Sasso because Will's gotten a lot of attention with Netflix acquiring Loudermilk, which was a show that kind of failed on another streaming service, but then found a new life and a new audience on Netflix, and now everybody knows who Will is. So when I saw Will turn up in your movie, I was so happy because he's such a great actor. He really is. And whatever character he latches onto and he decides to play, he does a great job with it. And he really commits, and he fully commits as your dad in this. What was it like to work with him?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot say enough about Will. He's become a friend, and the fact that we were Instagram buddies for about a year, just through happenstance, someone posted like my face on his body, and it sort of, we both thought it was, we followed each other. And then I started listening to his podcast, the Dudesy podcast, which everyone should listen to. It's hysterical. Um, and I was like, wow, this guy is like, I remembered him from Mad TV, but I hadn't really followed his career since then. And he's just the funniest motherfucker. Like he is, like he's the funniest person I know, like, hands down. And what he did with the role, like not to sound too cheesy, but like he took what was in the script and he's just like, okay, this is interesting, but I'm gonna make it my own thing, not by changing the words, but completely be himself. And it was amazing. Like I've never, one of the big differences between Diener '89 and the other films that I've written and been in, like the Fubar movie, is this was scripted, right? Fully scripted. Like 90% of the script is what you see on screen. And so I hadn't really worked in a scenario where you hire an actor and then you get an actor, man, like a capital A actor where they just walk on and you're just like, oh, okay, I don't have to do anything. I just have to be in the scene with you and it's gonna be freaking great. So yeah, I can't say enough about the guy. That he was just so happy to do the movie because he doesn't get work in Canada and he loves this country. He's an actor by trade. It's what he does for a living, and LA is gets those jobs. So,
And especially for him to be involved in in a movie that is so Canadian, you know.
oh yeah,
It's like we just finished seeing Lowell Dean is a good buddy of ours, and we just finished seeing Dark Match at Fantasia.
yeah,
And I don't know if you know about Dark Match, but it's a wrestling movie with Chris Jericho's in it, and there's a bunch of great actors that all have careers again outside,
okay.
of Canada, but they came back to do this wrestling movie that takes place in Manitoba. So it's just cool when you see people that aren't afraid to unabashedly say, hey, I'm Canadian and I'm happy to be in a Canadian project. And this movie is so Canadian.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we wanted to do is, and I think you noticed it in the production design, like how the props look and the sets and everything. Like we wanted this to look like a gritty '80s town, and
Well,
and not.
like down to the wood paneling room in the basement when you guys are hanging out, opening up the trunk and everything. Like my brother lives in Vancouver in North Van, but he lives in an old house and that basement is all paneled like that. So you feel that. Like I feel that. Like I could smell that basement.
Yeah, well, that's just it. Like, we really wanted to avoid the sort of 80s Christmas movie vibe that every single. I don't know if it's because they have too much money and they sort the perfect brand new football, like everything, like Nintendo 64, like everything looks just so like it just came out of the box. Whereas, like, I remember in the 80s, everything was covered with grime and grit, and like things were dirty. You know what I mean? Like, there's cigarette butts. Everything smelled like smoke and stale beer. Like that was the vibe that we really wanted to have, and I think that yeah,
Yeah,
that's that.
the world feels lived in. That's for sure.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it feels authentic. Like the whole scene with your girlfriend's aunt. When you guys are listening to music and that thing happens with the stereo and all that, and like I was there, I could feel the fibers of the carpet and everything. It was just like, so yeah, whoever did your production design, it did a great job because you really are in that world.
Yeah, no, well, Winnipeg is predominantly still stuck in the 80s, which is pretty awesome. Like, their downtown is like so gritty in 80s, and
Ryan and I are very involved with a bunch of Comic Cons. Like I'm a spokesperson, and Ryan's on our comms team, and in our he's part of the whole like the look of the Comic Con and does our panels too with us. Like we're very involved with like Montreal, Ottawa,
Mhm.
Quebec City, and Winnipeg. So we've been going to Winnipeg now. It'll be our fourth year going to the con in Winnipeg, and you feel it when you're in Winnipeg. Like Winnipeg still feels lived in.
Yeah, it's also quite dangerous.
I remember going there in the '90s and playing at the Royal Albert, um, and that was like it was a hotel show bar that still exists, and it was just terrifying. But what was great was that we could always play 2 nights there, and then when we were done, we would have we'd have rooms to stay in that we would not shut the lights off in, because it was like if you shut the lights off and you turn them back on, like everything that was crawling around there would come out and then go back. So you didn't want to see, you kept, but we had a place to sleep. So, and I always
Yeah.
liked Winnipeg because
Yeah.
the crowd that was there to see you fucking play, and you better play well.
Hey, this is a nerdy question, but maybe you have an idea what the answer. Did Hardcore Logo play a show in the movie? Is that one of the towns they played in?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
almost.
Hardcore Logo. I think the movie starts in Vancouver and they make their way to Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg might be the last show. And
I
funny you
think you're
say
right.
that because the
Yeah.
dude who plays Billy Talent is fucking coming to Ottawa Comic Con, and I'm so excited. Out of everybody, I'm sure
Yeah, me too.
everybody there, they all have a lot of fans. But I'm the biggest Hardcore Logo and SLC punk. Any movie about punk like that came out in the like '90s, I swallowed it,
Yeah.
and metal too.
Information, Ryan.
Yeah.
What was his name, Ryan? The his
Oh God.
character's name? Like
Oh, Billy
Really
Talent.
talent.
Billy Talent. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
where
the
the
name
band,
and the
the band.
And
fucking
it was
band.
Joe Dick, Billy
Yeah.
Talent. I'm trying to
Yeah.
find the
Pipe
bass player.
fitter, pipe
Pipe Fit.
fitter. Yeah, and John Oxenberg.
Dude, that movie, I saw that. The funny thing is, like, people are like, "Oh, what's your favorite movie?" And it's kind of hard not to say Spinal Tap because it's
Yeah.
just it. I've
The
seen
band.
it. It's the movie I've seen the most, other than Revenge of the Nerds.
Mm.
But the movie that had, like, when people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, wow, yeah, man, like Fubar had a lot of influence on me and stuff." The movie that I say had a lot of influence on me was Hardcore Logo, because I saw it in theater in Montreal the weekend that it came out. Fucking theater was packed. People were drunk. There was punks. There was people in there like who just came off the street, who like saved up their, whatever, their drug money to see a movie. Like, it was
Mm.
wild in
Yeah.
that theater. And I went back and saw it like two more times. And I was like, this is a Canadian movie? Like, how is this so good? It really was the first sort of like inkling that we can do cool shit in this country. And it was really, really inspiring.
And it was a direct link to all the stuff that was happening music wise in the '90s in Canada. When we had that whole wave of our own alternative rock bands. When Our
Mhm.
Lady Peace broke, when I Mother Earth broke, when Tea Party broke, and then of course we got the Headstones and Hugh Dillon. Like I played with Hugh at the El Macombo, and
Mhm.
I'll never forget seeing this guy go up on stage. I was like, who is this guy? He's like our fucking Johnny Rotten. Like he was the real deal.
Yeah,
And
he's a piece of shit. Like, he was like
and his character and if you ever meet, I mean, I don't know if you've met Hugh before, but
no, no, I've never met him before. say that with like the utmost respect.
He's one of the most he's well, first of all, he's sober. So and he's clean and he's one of the most
That
wonderful,
helps.
hardworking, kindest people you'll ever meet. But his character, as lead singer of the Headstones back.
no, but I'm talking about like 1998.
Yeah, no. Well, I played with him in like '95.
You're
He was a
dealing.
he was a fucking no in '95. He was scary, man. Like we did
Yeah,
sound check and we saw him. We didn't even talk to him. And
yeah,
like he was spitting on people and they were spitting on him. And it was just like, it was real. So when
yeah.
Hardcore Logo came out, I was like, he's playing himself in this fucking movie. And it was, yeah, I have that movie. Like I've got Hardcore Logo 1 and 2 on Steelbook. Like I'm full on with you guys with Hardcore Logo. And this really did give me that kind of feel. So if you were going for anything that had that palette and that vibe, you definitely achieved it.
Nice.
So we were talking. I'm so glad you actually said what your favorite movie was. But were you ever tempted just for money, legality, just making it easier? Were you ever tempted to make a fake band for this movie? And following up that, what's your favorite fake band? Because I love Daisy Jones and the Six, and I love what's it called? That Thing You Do, The Wonders. Like I love bands that only exist in the story that they're telling.
Uh-huh.
So were you ever tempted to make your own fake band? And what's your favorite fake band?
I think maybe my least favorite band would be Daisy Jones and the Six. I sort of hate watched that whole show. With all due respect to people,
No, all good, all good.
like
Please.
I was like, oh my, the fucking douchebag guy who was the sort of genius in the band. Oh god,
Nice.
I wanted to kill that guy. But but anyways, if the movie was going to have any success, it had to have the legitimacy of a real band. Um, like it wasn't going to be my friends. It wasn't going to be, it had to be like a real band. And at one point we had Dawkins was going to be in it.
Mhm.
Um, but Pilson was on tour. Like is he playing Foreigner? I think now. So like he's on tour all the time. The bass player. Like so it was like okay, well we can't get Dawkins, but we can get Dawkins. Like we can have the sign and we can
You can use Dawkins.
so we'll get them to dress like Doc, like late 80s Dawkins and stuff. So that was great. But no, I never really wanted to have a fake band. It had to be Dawkins from day one. It was in the script, brother.
Nice.
And I mean, I don't know. There is no other band, fake band, other like some of the other ones that you named are great.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
Hardcore
but
Logo is a fake band in a way, but do you ever read the book? It's like literally DOA. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Joey
read the book. I
Shithead.
was I was I
Yeah.
was supposed to work with. I wrote a script. The script that I wrote right after Fubar Two was a script called Girl Crime, and it was about four girls who sign a pact, like a voodoo pact, with a Haitian taxi driver, and then it happens in Montreal, and they're sort of like their pact with the devil is that they'll sell their souls for a number one album, and so it's like their careers are in the tank, and then they do this like weird pact, and things get worse and worse, but then all of a sudden something happens and their career takes off, and it's that sort of dealing with success kind of thing. And Bruce wanted to make it into Hardcore Logo 3. If
Oh.
you can believe that, like we were hung out, we were like hanging out in Toronto when everything was going on. We applied to a bunch of funds, and then sort of stuff fell through. And he ended up doing Hardcore Logo 3 with Dan McIver or Don McIver, and it just sort of whatever. Like no, like I still love the guy. Like nothing bad happened. It just didn't work out. But yeah, I do have a link with Hardcore Logo in that sense that I almost made Hardcore Logo 3.
Awesome.
So wait, so your favorite fake band is still Spinal Tap, I guess?
It would be Spinal Tap, and it's not even close. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm like if I have two personalities, like it's the sort of like the guy who grew up reading like Shakespeare and like an English lit degree and who thinks he's way smarter than he actually is. And then on the other side, there's me who loves the absolute most ridiculous, like the cucumber at the airport joke is the funniest thing. I'll laugh the next 50 times I watch that. Like those are the dueling sides of my personality. So when it comes to fake bands, yeah, there's nothing tops Spinal Tap. Like they're doing a new movie, and you know what? It's gonna be amazing. Like these guys are all in their 60s, if not 70s, and it's gonna be absolutely spectacular because you see that anything they do, like they'll do a little ad together, like the four of them or the three of them get together to do like a little, sort of a little, I don't know, a teaser for something, and it's just like it's hysterical. So I cannot wait for this film.
My favorite Spinal Tap thing they ever did was in a year and a half in the life of Metallica. They show up for like a minute, and they show up for a minute, and everything they make the edit is fucking hilarious. They're like, "So the Black album, where did you get an idea for that?" It's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's the mother's tongue." No, no, we don't talk about his mother's tongue. It's fucking amazing.
I'll have to see that. I never saw that.
I
That's
love
is that on
Spinal Tap
YouTube?
in other shit more than their
Yeah, well,
movie,
that
if that
I
makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean,
I love their movie, but just their cameo power is fucking The Simpsons. Holy shit. Good night, Springton. There'll be no encore.
Yeah. Well, I got a chance to interview Derek Smalls. I interviewed the character Derek Smalls, which was so meta for me because it was like me as a journalist interviewing a guy who plays a guy with a mustache who's in a band who's in a movie. It's just like what's
yeah,
going
yeah, yeah.
on. But I interviewed him for when his album came out, and it was so fun. I asked him, I was like, hey man, can you do me a favor? Like, I was nerding out and I was like, can you do a little plug? Because it was right around when my album was coming out. I was like, can you do like a little plug for my band? And he's like, well, what's the name? And he's like, Night Seeker. And he's like, Night Seeker, bring on the night. Maitre D, we need more night. And I was just like, thank
This is
you.
the best moment ever. See, that's the thing that's cool about working in any capacity in this kind of business is when you're able to do things like that. Those are the little things like, career wise, it might not, it might not have put money in your pocket, it might not have given you notoriety, but it meant something to you. And that's what, that's the stuff the stuff you do is that kind of stuff. It's the kind of stuff that means something to somebody. And you don't realize until, you get a guy like you who goes and gushes over Spinal Tap. There's going to be some guy coming up in, 15 years that's going to gush about the stuff you've done. And that's what's beautiful about that, that transference of energy and being able to give that to someone else and give someone else the opportunity to give that back. And
Well, let me tell you a story, because I know that a lot of your listeners live in Ganawagi, and there's a lot of Indigenous people that listen to this to your program. So,
Absolutely.
I,
Shout out to
I'm
Jasmine Gunn.
yeah. Shout out to Adam LeBorn.
Yeah.
I'm in Edmonton, and that's the city that has the second largest Indigenous population right after Winnipeg, urban Indigenous population that is. And I'm getting people are people hand me a beer before, like there's like 300 people lined up, and I'm sort of like right in front of the line theater. I'm shaking everyone's hand, signing stuff because I think that's important. And a lot of Indigenous faces, and among them, like some guy gives me a beer, another guy gives me a joint. It's like cool, and then another guy gives me a pack of cigarettes. Like, oh, I'm all cool. And then it was like the next day that I'm like going through my stuff, and I took out the pack of cigarettes. I was like, he didn't give me a pack of cigarettes. He's giving me tobacco. You know what I mean? As if I was like an elder. It was really moving because I don't think of myself as that. I'm still really not comfortable necessarily with that role. I'm working it out myself because my dad was not, he was told he was Indigenous, and I didn't even know until my 30s that we, family genealogy. So it's this strange sort of responsibility that I was feeling, but at the same time, for me, this is all a journey. It's all about learning how to tell the stories and how people take them and how to take that knowledge, like make it better for the next one and stuff. So
I saw that you were at Fan Expo last weekend, and well, Diener met the Trailer Park Boys, and we've had the Trailer Park Boys at our shows before. How was that meeting? And was that your first time meeting the guys?
Well, it was kind of funny because I like I had I guess texted JP Tremblay on I not texted, I guess DM'd him a couple years ago on Instagram, and we sort of went back and forth, just sort of shooting the shit over cars and sort of nerdy stuff. And then saw that they were also going to be at FanCon, so I messaged him and I said, hey, do you mind if I come by your table, say hi? And he's like, yeah, sure, that'll be hilarious. We'll be drinking all day and signing shit. Like, come on down. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, how can I do this where it's not just me busting the line and being kind of a jerk? So yeah, I got a cape, and I had like the most obscene get up. I got some of my actor friends in Toronto, like a friend of mine who's like 6'4". He dressed up as a sort of a security guard, and then I had this other guy with full blade costume, and my son was there. weightlifters. He had like, he's like a sort of a bodyguard guy with like the
Mm.
laser shades on,
That
and
was
it
your
was
son? I saw the
yeah,
clip. That's your son.
yeah, the guy, and I can't just say hi. I have to give them something. And I was like, what's the funniest thing? I was like, going way back to the first season of the Trailer Park Boys, where I think it was Ricky's dad was a trucker and he had piss jugs all over his front lawn. And I was like, okay, this is a great callback. This is going back to old school Trailer Park Boys. So I brought and I could just put like a little sticker on it that said Diener's Piss. Uh, and as I just like, I put that up on. Actually, my kid was holding it. It was pretty funny. He was so proud to have the funniest prop. So he put that up on the table, a jug of Diener's Piss. And then Bubbles is like, "Is that piss?" And
What
then
the
they would.
fuck?
And none of them would drink it, so I ended up chugging a bunch of it, and everyone was just like, "What is going?"
It was
They-
apple. It was apple juice, right?
oh my
There's just a
god.
little bit of my piss in there,
If a guy
just
from Letterkenny
for
walked by
legitimacy.
with one of the Degrassi people, you would have all of Canada's greatest exports. Well, besides the kids in the hall, of course. But actually, wait, I'm glad I asked you that. What is your favorite besides your illustrious career, and what is the famous Canadian thing that you've when you go around the world and people recognize you, they're always like, yeah, Canada, Trailer Park Boys. Like, what is something that's close to you that you feel really proud to be a Canadian that because it's an export from us?
Me?
Yeah.
It's just gonna sound so cheese ball, and you can cut it out, but kindness, I think.
Uh,
Like I think that like it's something that transcends uh cultures, that there is kindness in every culture, but I think that ours is particularly notable. Like say this when I did like a tailgate party in Winnipeg recently, and it's like so sort of trite just to use the term like salt of the earth. Like what does that mean? But these people were just so real and nice, and they were just so happy to say hi to me for 30 seconds. I'm sitting there with families. Some guy came from like 3 hours north of Winnipeg. His daughter had on an Iron Maiden shirt. She was maybe 7. The whole family was in metal shirts, and they came just to say hi, and they were just so kind. You know what I mean? They were just like great people. I heard the Pamela Kamala Harris speech, and just the sort of like fucking American exceptionalism that was going on in that thing absolutely made me fucking insane. Like I get that it's part of like what they're trying to do, and that's how they have to win this election. But this idea Americans are so much better than everyone else, like fuck you guys. Canadians are the best. We're the real melting pot, and if there's one country that can talk about exceptionalism, it's Canadians. So shove that up your ass.
Amazing.
So movie opens up everywhere September 6th, right?
Yeah, September 666, brother. And if I can say one thing,
You can say more than one thing.
if you're still with us after what is it, almost a half an hour, that means you must be interested in some or another, which is great. And you think, okay, when we do go see it on the first week, Canadian film does not make money for the Cineplexes. The only way to prove it wrong is on the opening weekend. So you go Friday night, you go Saturday night, Sunday during the match. You go one of those 3 days. And I highly encourage anyone who's like stoked by this interview, like, yeah, that sounds cool.
That's the experience of seeing something in a theater, and yeah, it's like when I talk about casting, we're talking about politics and casting votes, and that's the best way to cast your vote for your approval of something like this. And believe me, there are a lot of people that would want to see a movie like this with a crowd of like-minded people. Like I just watched this video of uh, the big reveal, one of the big reveals in the Deadpool Wolverine movie. Like there's so many cameos, and basically what they did a split screen. They show the reveal happening in real time with an audience, and they're filming the audience, and you see the audience losing their fucking shit, screaming, and it's all happening at the same time, and it's beautiful to see. That's the experience. Ryan and I sometimes get to go see movies and press screenings and stuff, and it's like,
And they're
yeah,
dead. Yeah, there's no vibe. You're
no,
absorbing the
Yeah.
information, but you don't feel anything. I saw Deadpool opening day with a bunch of 7-year-olds for some
that's
reason. They were in my theater. And I was like, I wish I was with my people.
yeah,
People in their late 30s who are just losing their shit because they've paid attention to movies for 20 years. And they're like,
Mhm.
that's the person that was in that movie for about 5 seconds in 2002. I wish I could have saw it like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that we do live in a multiverse. I'm sure there's a version of yourself that got that experience. So know that and be satisfied. That
I think
within
there's a version of myself that has way more money and is a bit thinner in his 40s, but whatever. Good for him.
you can't weigh more than $1.05, man. Come on, give me a break.
I've been juggling the 205, 210 train for a few years, and I'm just like, what the fuck happened? I used
How
to be
tall are
Mr.
you?
About 5'10",
Okay,
5'10" and
so
a
you're
half.
like me, man. You gotta go. You gotta. I'm gonna be posting a video in a couple of days. It's how I went from 205 to I went down to 153
Oh,
for the movie.
oh my
You,
God. That's
yeah,
a lot
you
of
got.
weight, dude. That's
Yeah,
a small human. That's like
yeah.
most dogs.
Did you do intermittent fasting?
I had that when at the very end, yeah, because nothing else worked, and yeah,
Mhm.
so but yeah, it started out with just cutting out booze and sugar, and then it went to sort of I guess they call it the keto diet, which is just
Yep.
like
Mm.
meat and vegetables, and then after and I was working out obviously, just basic stuff like sit ups and push ups and riding the bike, and then yeah, then like after 4 months, I had sort of gotten pretty close. I was about 165, and I just couldn't lose that sort of like that stomach, you know. And then yeah, I had a little research online, and it's just like, okay, so you stop eating at 6, and you don't eating it until 11.
Yeah.
That sounds hard, and it was. It was, but it's kind of funny because Lou Ferrigno, I met him at a conference.
Yeah. We know Lou Rel.
Yeah, he told me, he's like, "Oh, Paul, the solution is you got to go with brown rice and turkey breast, or yeah, turkey breast. That's it." And I was like, "Okay, Lou." So that's pretty much what I ate during the whole shoot.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, you look super fit in the film. And although there's a preposterous side of you supposedly being a teenager, like
Yeah,
looking
I
at
was going
you,
to say.
but at one point I just went with it. I was
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
I
okay,
mean,
it
I like
makes
your
sense.
explanation. I like your explanation in the beginning. I had a glandular thing, and that's why I look so handsome.
yeah, I mean, the hardest part of that movie was watching the edit and realizing, okay, we're telling a serious story. How many times do we cut back to crazy Dean? You know what I mean? 'Cause every time we go back to him, it's something insane. And we decided every couple of minutes because it was so funny.
No, it was good. I love the narration. In fact, to know he's going to end up somewhere was kind of like cool. 'Cause no matter how shitty things got, I'm like, but he's got to make. It's got to work out, right? I mean, come
Yeah,
Yeah,
on.
there's a
and the explanation too, like I don't want to give anything away, but
Yeah.
the because a lot of the time you're like, what did he do to get successful? Like, was it music? And then when you figure out what it was, it's just great. It's a nice little wrap up.
yeah.
And also shout out to your orthodontic skills, man.
Hey man,
That was great.
I didn't get a degree in literature for nothing. I do my own orthodoncy.
That was painful. As someone who put two kids through races, I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah, there goes $2,000.
So our friend Mike Babbins, he had a shirt of a movie you're very well known for, and he lent it to a friend who went to a concert. He went to go see The Darkness, and later in the night he gets a phone call. He's like, "Dude, your FUBAR shirt's gone." And I'm like, what do you mean?" He's like, "I met Justin Hawkins. Justin Hawkins went up to me and says, I want that," in the British accent, "I want that shit right now." He's like, I'll trade you for a Thin Lizzy shirt." He's like, "Okay, but you have to like call my friend and leave a message on his answer machine proving this happened." So it's like, "Hey, Justin, hey, Babins, this is Justin from The Darkness. I just really need a football shirt, so I'll grab you a Thin Lizzy one. Yeah, cheers, mate." So yeah, I thought that was pretty fucking amazing. I just wanted to tell you that one because that's pretty cool. That Justin Hawkins of The Darkness loves your shit.
Well, he's in FUBAR too, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
things more than a feeling. And the reason that happened was I was in London, and I was shooting Mike Dowse's "It's All Gone Pete Tong," and a friend of mine who's a Calgary guy. Well, he's British, but he was living in Calgary. He was doing the promotion, like the A&R kind of like music rep for them. And he calls me up. He says, "Hey," because we were planning to go out for drinks while I was there, and he said, "Hey, man, what are you doing right now?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm just sitting at the hotel." He's like, "Take a taxi to the airport," and the darkness is just like hanging out in the lobby. So I fucking get in a taxi, head straight out to the line, and it was just like they were in like a bar, like they weren't in like a private area, and there was 50 empty bottles on the they were absolutely wasted, and I showed up. I drank probably 6 beers in about 4 minutes. I was like, I gotta catch up to these guys. At one point, like I did a backflip onto all the bottles onto the table, and Justin was like, "You're fucking hilarious, mate." And like instant chemistry. And then I didn't talk to them for years later. And finally, Fubar 2 happened. And I was like, hey, Justin, do you remember me? And he was like, yeah, mate. Yeah, that was great. So, yeah, he was on the soundtrack. No problem. It was actually pretty funny because he was like, I'm talking to him on the phone. He's like, you caught me at a really good time, man. I really needed this. And I never found out what he meant by that, but it sounded so sincere.
Yeah, he seems like just the nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Just to say, like, we came here today, of course, to talk about Diener 89, which is a beautiful film. Everybody listening right now, coming of age story. It shows just how important a concert is to a teenager. Jason and I, we saw No Effects the other day. We're on in the back of the stage behind the drummer, something that my 15-year-old brain could not have even comprehended because I was just so grateful to wait 7 hours to get in line to, get crushed by people who have 100 pounds on me, just to be
Mm.
able to sit in the front and see my heroes just obscured. And then 25 years later, be able to stand up there and be one of those guys that I used to see on the stage being like, holy shit, look at those guys bopping their heads. I wish I was where they were. Then 25 years later, here we are. But I got to say, just one quick thing about Fubar too. What you do with cancer is my favorite thing in any movie about the upside, just the fictional upside or whatever. I'm used to thinking I didn't have testicle cancer, but when I think of testicle cancer, I think about Bob and Fight Club, and what you guys do. It's just like, hey, he loses his balls, but then he becomes this amazing singer, and it's this happy ending. And I just want to definitely tell you, I think I kind of needed to see that in the movie back then because
Mhm.
it really was just kind of like suffer until you're better. It was the only time I've ever seen, hey, look at the bright side, and that's what happened. So anyway, thank you for letting me say that. Appreciate that.
Man, that's cool to hear that anecdote. I mean, I am definitely not of like whatever kills you doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's possibly the stupidest maxim to ever be created. But I think, trying to find the bright side in what life hands you is crucial. Because whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether everyone's unhappy, you know what I mean? Like it's the human condition is to feel like a piece of shit 90% of the time. So like you just always have to be looking like on the bright side and like trying to find goodness in others and in the world around you and stuff that like the opportunities that you get, no matter how small or insignificant they seem on the surface. So yeah, that was kind of like the whole point of giving something to Dean when something so heavy was taken away from him.
All right. So if people want to connect with you, if they want to find out more information, obviously we know the movie opens on the 6th. I imagine there's going to be other stuff around this in terms of maybe merch available. Can you give people a direct place where they can get more information?
Well, one more thing I would say is join us at Cinemas Park on the 6th. I'm going to be there. There'll be a Q&A afterwards, so that would be great to see people come out. A bunch of my friends are going to be there and some people from the film. And yeah, I mean, just whatever. Follow Diener on Instagram. Just put in Dean Murdoch Instagram. It'll come up, or same thing on Facebook. Like that's kind of the best way to follow what I'm doing. I don't have a website at this point. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
And what's next for you after this?
Yeah, I got a really fun TV show that I'm working on, which is kind of a skewering of the Canadian TV industry, which is like the idea of like a kid, a young sort of guy who gets an opportunity to make like a massive, super big budget movie about Louis Riel, and like there's so much expectation. It's going to be this like huge $20 million like Canadian never seen sort of Canadian budget, but all the hoops and shit that he's got to jump through, because he's like indigenous, but he's kind of like me, you know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
sort of discovering is and he's not part of a community and all the hoops that you have to sort of like jump through and just like the foreign investors from Europe that are coming over like expecting everyone to be in like fur Eskimo jackets and like riding horses around, and then he's got like the American streamers who come in on choppers, just like all these investors that he has to deal with, and then he's got the Hollywood actor that's his star who's just like just such a pompous dick, just all of those things. So it's going to be the making of that. That's one thing. The other thing I'm kind of excited about is the prequel to the origin story. So that talking about Dean's dad, who's a logger in North BC called Murray 69. So you go in 1969, and just basically like imagine a guy with a chainsaw, like
So lots of fun stuff coming down the pipe for you.
oh hell yeah.
Amazing. Dude, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and hang out. Of course, we encourage people go check out Diener 89. It opens in theaters everywhere this weekend. And you do not want to miss this movie. It's a lot of fun. And go bring your friends, sneak beer into the movie theater. Go see it if you have the means in a VIP where you can have beer legally. If not, definitely wear tight socks and throw like at least like 6 in each leg down your pant legs and just walk in real stiff and do it like you used to do it. Because it's
Yeah, man.
definitely a movie. Like I
That's
don't
so
drink.
funny.
I don't drink, but this is the movie that I would be sneaking fucking beers into if I was drinking.
That's just so great, Jason, because sneaking the beers in the socks. I mean, this is gonna sound so ridiculous, but oh my God, I'm totally outing myself as like a super loser. But I'll go to the bar and they have cans of like natural wine. And they don't sell it anywhere. So I'll go to like a dirtbag bar like Barfly, and they don't, like every time I go to Barfly, I have like hugest hangover after because like it's it's just like it's what it is. It's like it's Barfly, so I'll sneak in like a can of like organic wine in my sock. And people are like, oh, what are you drinking? Is that cider? Yeah, it's cider. It's
I
no,
admittedly,
it's like
I never sneak beer into bars, or to see shows. But Mike Babbins, who I brought up before, we went to go see the Spice Girls on their reunion tour, and security is just so lax because it's the Spice Girls and no one's expecting anything. It's not Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson, they're pretty much there with spears ready for you. They're like, all right, you fucking weirdos, what you gonna bring in? Spice Girls, they're like, in. So we put a bunch of beers in our hoods and put jackets over it. We look like the hunchback things from the Fifth Element walking in because it was wintertime. But that's like the only time I've ever snuck beer into a into a show is the fucking Spice Girls. And we were having a fucking blast. It was great.
what year was that?
I'm gonna say 2006, maybe 5,
Oh,
6.
okay. Peak
Yeah, yeah.
Spice Girls. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Congrats.
whenever they came back for like 5 minutes, they broke up like after that show. So maybe they had binoculars and said, "Why are these guys sneaking in beers? Let's stop our careers
Take
immediately."
responsibility.
All right, Paul, great guy. Sometimes we talk a little bit when it's done recording and stuff, and you just get a real sense that as soon as we stopped recording, the tonality didn't change. He's not a fake guy. Like he's a really true individual, and I don't know. I love it when people like this are on the show because I got a real sense that we, this interview mattered to me, but maybe it mattered to him too. I don't know.
He's a really, really good guy. And like I mentioned, I've met him before when he was launching the Night Seeker project, and he's just a really nice guy. And he always takes the time with people. You can tell that, we was talking about meeting people in line at the theater when they were coming for the screening. So I do encourage everyone, go check out Diener 89. It is going to be in theaters this weekend. It's going to be happening at Cinema du Parc on the 6th. They're going to be doing a very special screening where Paul will be attending. This is the kind of movie that you want to see in a theater. So any theater that it's playing in any city that you're in, go support this movie. This is how we get a message to people that we want to see more content like this, is by going to the theater and paying money and buying a ticket and being there and supporting. So do that, please. If you like everything that Paul does, and if you're a fan of Diener, and if you want to see the origin story of Diener, then this is the way to find out what happened to Dean Murdoch to make him who he is. And it's going to be cool. I think people are going to love this movie. So definitely go check out Diener 89 in theaters everywhere this weekend. Big thanks to my co-host Ryan Stick. Big thanks to our producer Julia Kajerski. Big thanks to our friends over at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. Use our promo code Rockman20, get 20% off your entire order. A big shout out to Studio House Designs, to our friends at Audio Technica Canada, and to all of you for joining us on this journey. Please like, subscribe, and tell us what you want to hear and who you want to see on the Rockman Power Hour in the comments, and we'll be happy to oblige. Until then, we'll see you next time on the Rockman Power Hour. Hey, thanks so much for watching the podcast. We really appreciate your support. And if you're enjoying the podcast, click this link right over here to watch the next episode, and click right over here and subscribe. And that way you won't miss anything.